first, I want to concentrate on California's new unelected senator. Her name, Laphonza Butler.
Time and again, we have been told what choices we can and cannot make. We have come together across race and across place to respond to questions about our rights with clarity and resolve. Nursing home workers in 33 facilities that have improved standards.
Yeah, that's a little hard to hear, but that's the announcement video today released by California Governor Gavin Newsom. He's chosen the woman who runs Emily's List and lives in Maryland. She doesn't even live in California. Lives in Maryland. The abortion industry mogul is now going to have a United States Senate seat. For more on this story, I want to go to Matthew Foldi. He's a political reporter for The Spectator, a former congressional candidate, and he joins us now. Matthew, good to have you with us, sir.
And importantly, a Marylander.
And importantly, a Marylander. So your neighbor is
like California's new senator.
Yeah, your neighbor's going to be a senator now. What do you think of that?
I think that, you have to obviously expect that in a situation like this, Gavin Newsom will appoint an insane leftist, defund the police activist to the Senate, which he did. But what I wasn't expecting was for it to be a Marylander. And look, as a Maryland guy, I'm thrilled to have a third senator. Mm-hmm. I think she will be looking out for Silver Spring, where she lives and votes. But if I am one of the over 1 million black women in California, remember Newsom, he walks back pledges all the time, but he pledged during his contentious recall, if I need to appoint a senator, I will appoint a black woman. He also said this person will be a caretaker and not run for re-election before walking that back last week. But yes, I am thrilled. But the fact that Newsom felt like he needed to go all the way across the country, almost as far as you could possibly go to fulfill this promise, also raises some questions of basic competency on his team, right? If you were dead set on taking the head of Emily's List, how did you not say to her, hey, can you maybe, A, scrub your online Twitter and LinkedIn profiles of your Maryland residency? I was the one who found that, and then it led me down a rabbit hole, which had me confirm last night that she registered to vote in Maryland last year. It's kind of basic failures of competency, or Newsom said, you know what, we know this, and we just don't care. We're doing it anyway.
Right, totally. And so there are a couple of locations that you have located that show that she claims to be from Maryland, because that is where she's from. So on her Twitter account, it said, as of yesterday, it said that she was located in Maryland. On Emily's List's website, they very proudly say on her About Us page that she lives in Maryland. Now, what's interesting about all of this is in the last 24 hours, this is such a perfect Democrat story, by the way, because it has every feature of the modern Democrat Party. In the last 24 hours, they've erased all of the evidence of her living in Maryland from all of these websites.
Yeah. And the solution that they've proposed, by the way, is, she's just going to get, or already has, another house in California. She's just like you and me. Who does not have two homes in some of the most expensive places in America? She's just like us.
Just like us. Bi-coastal getaways. Everyone's got them.
Exactly.
So Laphonza Butler. And another piece here that I think is probably worth dwelling on is how much money her organization has explicitly raised and given to Democrats through the years. On their website, Matthew Foldi, they brag about some $850 million that they have spent so far with the sole purpose of electing Democrats. So in case you're wondering how much it costs to buy a Senate seat and not have voters involved at all, we've got a price tag here, $850 million.
Interestingly, to that point, remember that Gavin Newsom had an opportunity to appoint a relatively moderate black woman who actually lives in California, someone like San Francisco Mayor London Breed, who is at least mildly in support of police. But the fact that he didn't is very telling. And you're right, there's, this price tag on the California Senate seat. But importantly, think about what this means for people like Adam Schiff, Barbara Lee, and Katie Porter, who have been running for this Senate race. I think it's very possible, at least with Katie Porter, you will see some potential pressure on her to run for re-election. Right now, the top candidate Democrats have in that seat was recently arrested for drunk driving. Meanwhile, Katie Porter, of course, infamously dumped boiling hot mashed potatoes on her husband, but I don't think that's a crime. So they might try and say, hey, clearly you're not going to win here, right? But it's also interesting. There are so many dynamics at play here. There's also the Pelosi angle here, right? Pelosi, who said she's running again. She's not stepping aside. She's all in for Adam Schiff. So where does this leave her in this now at least four-way Senate primary, assuming that no one else bows out? It also shows on a federal level, how weak the Congressional Black Caucus is. I think 3 days ago, they wrote to Gavin Newsom saying, hey, please appoint Barbara Lee. She is already a Black woman who you've said you would appoint. And he completely ignored them as well. But this is going to be an interesting thing moving forward as well, because with her role living in Maryland and having this national donor presence, she could, by virtue of just the organization she used to run, she could very quickly become a fairly important figure in Democratic politics, even though most people, including a lot of people in California, have no idea who this woman is.
Yeah, totally. Well, at least conveniently for her, once she joins the Senate, she'll have a house nearby. Which, of course, is the house she lives in right now. So there's that.
And registered to vote in last year. I can't emphasize enough. She probably voted for Jamie Raskin for Congress last year and is now going to be a senator from California.
Isn't that amazing? So Laphonza Butler.
It says that you or I could be appointed a senator from somewhere we don't live. Why not? It's great.
Now, do we know yet whether or not she is going to throw her hat in the ring to keep the seat?
So there's no determination on that yet. However, Newsom, who is as legitimate as his hair is product free, he said, I will only appoint a temporary senator who will not run for re-election. He walked that back last week. So if you are a relatively young Democrat appointed to the U.S. Senate for the largest state in America, I think there is a 0% chance that you're not taking that and running, right?
Yeah.
He could have appointed an elder statesman who would have not. He could have appointed, if he broke his pledge, Barbara Boxer, who actually retired from the Senate. He could have appointed her and said, hey, it's yours for another year. Let the Dems sort it out. But if you have the president of Emily's List at a time where Democrats really only have abortion to run on next year, I think it's just it is hard to believe that she's going to say, you know what, I'll just be senator for a couple months.
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, that is obviously the reason this occurred. I mean, in addition to, there's a lot of converging reasons. One is the amount of money that's at play. They're giving the abortion industry its very own Senate seat, $850 million raised so far, and many more millions in the future for these Democrats. They want to call attention to the issue of abortion because they think, as you pointed out, that that's a winning issue for them. But really, this woman doesn't get this job were it not for her unbridled support for human sacrifice. And here she is going to the United States Senate.
The point you just said is also important on how Emily's List, in essence, has its own personal senator now. I think it's not just that, though. This is a senator, certainly not for the state of California, right? 0 people elected this person. Of course, anyone is eligible to be appointed. Think about, though, when Gavin Newsom appointed Alex Padilla, the other United States senator from California who was appointed by Gavin Newsom. This was at least a statewide elected official who people have voted for in the past, right? But the difference here is this is a senator, in addition to being for Emily's List, for Gavin Newsom. For Gavin Newsom, 2028, so he can cash in as many chits as he can with the pro-abortion groups in America. But it also could be a senator, for Gavin Newsom in 2024, right? We all know there are obvious questions about Biden's physical and mental health. Gavin Newsom is doing everything he possibly can to remind Democrats that he exists. He was squatting like a homeless person in San Francisco at the GOP debate, willing to talk to anyone and everyone there about Taylor Swift or anything else under the sun.
Right.
And while he himself, as far as I'm aware, does not identify as a Black woman, he will be able to say, look, skip over Kamala and I'm ready to rock and roll in 2024 if you need me. Fast forward to 2028, he will be term limited out of the governor's office.
Yes. And
he will now for sure not be a United States senator. It's much easier to run for president if everyone's paying attention to you all the time, right? But come 2027, he's going to be unemployed. So this is an investment in the future for him. At least he'll be able to say, look, I gave Emily's List one of its biggest wins ever. I made its president an unelected U.S. senator. Keep that in mind when you guys are picking a presidential candidate in 2028. But I wouldn't dismiss 2024 as well.
Okay, so give me your sense of the media coverage of all of this, because the only thing I've really seen is California set to get its first black woman lesbian senator, as if those are the most important details here. Whereas I kind of think that $850 million for Democrats and and millions of abortions per year, that seems like a bigger deal to me.
Well, let's also not forget the other historic landmark that this is making, which is that, as far as I know, California is now getting its first Marylander U.S. senator.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sorry, I should have included that.
Yeah, Maryland, we matter too here, right? We just got a new senator. As far as the media coverage goes, though, it's predictably horrible. To the extent that her Maryland residency is even mentioned, it's as an afterthought, as opposed to, hey, are we serious? There are over 1 million black women living in California, unlike their new senator, who Newsom said, none of you are good enough for me. So that is an important thing. It's not just also that she lives here. She's voting in Maryland, and she will be a senator from California, which is literally the other side of the country. Now, there was the Newsom spin on this is it's just like Dick Cheney changing his residency to Wyoming before he became announced as George Bush's vice president. And I think that is what Newsom's office said. I think that's completely insane, because at least Dick Cheney had the foresight to do it before he was announced, right? Whereas this new senator said, I don't even care. I'm just going to leave it until I'm called out. And as you said, they've now rewritten history, removing Maryland from her Twitter bio, from her Emily's List official biography. But that, to me, again, it kind of goes back to Gavin Newsom. How did they let this slip? Yeah. How can you possibly not do a basic vetting? I did more vetting of this senator seemingly driving home from the horrible Patriots game last night than Gavin Newsom's political operation. Or they did it and they just didn't care. I'm not sure which is worse,
right.
But as he is trying to position himself as the savior of the Democratic Party, basic competence is something that he needs to be projecting. So I think this reflects incredibly poorly on him as he's trying to make the case to Democrats that he's their savior. Okay, here he is ready to make history with this new Maryland appointee to the U.S. Senate. And he can't even do that properly, let alone govern the state of California properly, right? I mean, California, horrible. But basic competence, even in making this appointment, shows that he is really suffering from judgment problems. And if he's saying to Democrats, hey, jettison Biden, who's also suffering from obvious judgment problems, this is a tough case to make.
Matthew Foldi, finally, Laphonza Butler, as we've talked about so frequently here in this conversation, is a black female lesbian Marylander. Adam Schiff is none of those things. And obviously, those are the things that Democrats prize. What are the chances Adam Schiff can actually win this race now?
Honestly, it may be higher because now there are two black women running in this race. You have Barbara Lee and potentially Laphonza Brown. Now, remember, we don't yet know if she's going to run for the full term. I think she would be crazy not to. I think the assumption is that she will, given Newsom breaking that promise last week. But this is California we're talking about, right? It is really anyone's ballgame. Mm-hmm. And as before this happened, before Feinstein died last week, the three main candidates, Schiff, Porter, and Lee, had to at least on some level try and appeal to Republicans to vote for them. Because remember, Senate elections in California are top two. So you can have a Democrat and a Democrat advance. You can have a Democrat and a Republican advance, et cetera, et cetera. So it'll be interesting to see how her presumed presence, will affect things. If she does not end up running, I think Schiff has a great chance of winning. If she is running, it's tough to say. No one knows who this woman is.
Yes.
So what is going to be the power of incumbency, especially when you're running against another black woman who's been in the race already, who does have a lot of institutional support? Where does Katie Porter fit into this with Elizabeth Warren backing and presumably of the backing of the pour boiling mashed potatoes on your husband lobby?
Yep.
Where does Adam Schiff come in with the Russiagate, community? Porter and Schiff, remember, are raising tens of millions of dollars. And Donald Trump has actually been helping Adam Schiff, I think, by continuing to attack him. So it's very possible we have Senator Schiff. It's possible we have Senator Porter.
Sure.
It's possible we have Senator Lee. We already are going to get Senator Butler. I think it's impossible to kind of predict based on what we know now how that will look out. But I am not going to say to you, you're right, Adam Schiff is a white dude, but it's impossible that he'll be elected U.S. Senator, right? Joe Biden beat, Kamala Harris, Amy Klobuchar, et cetera, in 2020. So this is going to be a great case study of a bunch of colliding factors.
Yeah.
Race, gender, sexuality, incumbency, money, name ID, all playing out in the craziest state in America.
Yeah, and who knows? Maybe Adam Schiff will say that he's a lesbian because he's married to a woman. I mean, you never know at this point.
I mean, at this point, Vince, I mean, maybe you just get elected senator in California if residency doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If, basic, common sense doesn't matter. Why not have you win? I don't know.
It's
I'd vote
perfectly.
for you over these people.
Thank you, Matt. I really appreciate that. I'm about $850 million short of getting that seat, but I really appreciate the vote of confidence. Thank you, sir. Nice to talk to you today, Matthew Foldi.